So the next step of this video, we're going to take you through how to do the front and back facings using iron-on interfacing. Now, iron-on interfacing is needed. We're putting it around the neckline here. It's going to add some structure, make the fabric a bit harder and thicker so that the neckline sits nicely on your final garment. So what we're going to do is we're going to unpin the pattern from our fabric, and we're going to, exactly the same way that we cut out the fabric for our garment, we are going to cut the interfacing out like that. So on here, pattern number 6 for me, I need to put this pattern on a fold. So here we've folded our interfacing in half. The gluey dots, so the rougher side of the interfacing is in the middle here. And we're going to pin that in place on the fold. And then this back facing here, it says to cut to, so we'll position this somehow on the interfacing here. It doesn't really matter the direction of the interfacing like it does with the direction of the fabric for stretch and things like that. It's just going to stick on there ultimately, so it's not really a big deal if you put it around different ways. Once your interfacing is pinned into place, taking long strides to cut out the interfacing along the line of the pattern is important. No small choppy strides so that you're keeping the edges nice and neat.
So with our fabric wrong side facing up, so the good side touching the table, we've now aligned our interfacing. We've made sure that we are feeling that we can feel the bumps of the glue, and that's what needs to be lying onto the fabric. Lined up all our pieces. As we move over to the iron now, we're going to make sure that we get some scrap fabric that we know has already been washed, so it's not going to link any colour onto our good fabric, and lay it over so we don't get any glue onto the iron.
Once you've ironed on your interfacing, you'll clearly be able to see that it is stuck to the fabric, and the fabric should feel more rigid and stiff. We're now ready to start sewing these pieces onto our shirt. So now that you've ironed on all the pieces of your interfacing, what we're going to do is we're going to work on the front piece first. So our front piece is done, we have our darts, it's all ironed in place. The next step is for us to go to the sewing machine, and around the neckline, 1 centimeter from the edge, we want to do a straight stitch following that U shape of the neckline. Once you have done your stay stitch, so it's just a simple stitch around the edge of the whole neckband, we're going to look at what we need to do with the interfacing. With your largest piece of interfacing, we are going to hem this bottom curve here. So what we want to do is we want to fold the fabric roughly 1 centimeter. We want to fold it onto the interfacing like that, pin it in place, and along the whole length, we want to sew to hold this hem down and hold this in place. So go ahead now and hem and straight stitch the bottom length of this long piece of interfacing. Now that you have hemmed the bigger part of your interfacing, this long curve at the bottom here, what we're going to do is with good sides facing, we are going to place our interfacing facing up onto the top, so the good side, these are our darts of our fabric. What we need to do is we need to pin these shoulders. We're going to pin the shoulders in place. We are going to do the exact same thing, and we are going to pin our neckline and sew it at 1.5 centimeters, as well as pin the armholes and sew them at 1.5 centimeters on the sewing machine as well. We're going to remember to reverse stitch at the beginning and the end here, and make sure that we're keeping our stitches nice and straight and trying not to form any rough jags, because as you flip this out, which will be the next step, we need it to be nice and neat. So now that you have sewn all edges, so the armholes, the neckline, around the whole piece of interfacing and your shirt, we are going to grab a pair of fabric scissors, and along all of the curved edges, you are going to cut little slits or notches into the fabric so that when we turn it in the right way, it's going to sit flush. So go ahead now and create your little notches. So I'm just doing every, say, 1 to 1.5 centimeter. I'm just cutting little slits, but I'm making sure that I am not getting too close to the stitching. Okay, so now that you've done your little notches all along the curved edges, we're going to place our hands inside, grab hold of the shoulders, and we're going to pull them through. Now this part is going to be quite fiddly. You need to push all of the corners out and get them to be really sharp and have a real significant point on there. So keep maneuvering them around. Okay, so once you've turned your interfacing in the right way and you're happy with the points that it has created at the corners, you're going to head over to the ironing board. Now what we need to do is we really need to iron down this interfacing, and we need to iron down the front facing. What we want to make sure of is that there is a slight seam. Okay, so if we're looking around here, you can see where we've stitched the front to this piece of interfacing. What we need to do is we need to make sure that this is kind of pushed to or visible from the back side. We don't want this seam to be visible from the front. So make sure as you're going along and ironing that you're maneuvering the fabric so that the seam is more pointed towards the back of the shirt, the inside of the shirt. So as you can see on the edge here, you can see the seam is pointed more to this side, and this side is quite clean. And you can see the seam here. So you need to go ahead and you need to iron around the whole piece of your shirt. I've now ironed this in place, and you can see from the front you can't see any of the seams, whereas on the back you can only just see the little seams running around the edge. You can also see, just by me holding it up, how much structure we have at the top of our shirt here compared to at the bottom. So it's really important. The structure is going to really affect how the final product looks once we are wearing it.